Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be going over some program design for an athlete who's dealing with some general knee crankiness. So this is a CrossFit athlete. They're 34 years old currently, but they're going to age up into 35 to 39. This is a made-up person, by the way. I'm not actually programmed for one of my athletes yet. I might do that in the future, though. So a little bit more about this fake avatar athlete. They're had some meniscus surgeries in the past, so they have had some actual trauma to their knee. However, that was in 2014 and 2016. Currently, they're not really dealing with any traumatic or acute injuries. It's more so the fact that they just get, again, sort of general crankiness when they squat heavy or with high volume. And then if they're asked to do that multiple times in a week, that's where all those things start to compound. So you're going to see I'm obviously very, mindful about how I give them doses of squatting movements, where I place it in the week, how I space it out, all those types of things. But lastly about this athlete is that they are this is going to be starting on October 31st, so the week of October 31st, and they're going to be basically gearing up for sort of qualifier season and then getting into their competitive season. So this isn't a super intensive training block necessarily. It's sort of like an in-between, definitely not off season, definitely not pre-competition phase, somewhere in the middle. So a little bit of context, let's jump into it. So the first thing that I want to do for this athlete is create a template for them. So basically you could also call this like a skeleton. It's a look at their week. It helps me to stay anchored. So I always put in their template first, and then I build off that template each time. So there's areas where I can be creative based on that. I've done education on templates before, so I'll link to that. You can check that out if you so desire. So let's get into it. Basically, they're going to be following the typical training split: Thursday recovery, Sunday off. They're training 5 days a week, hard training, and they're doing one session per day in those days. So pretty typical stuff. This is very similar to what I would do in the protocol. So Monday, again, this is someone who I didn't mention this before, but they're dealing with some squatting strength limitations too in terms of their sport performance. That's definitely something that they need to work on. So the back squat is going to be one thing that's going to really, really important to help drive up their 1RMs, just because you can load it as heavy as you possibly can. So Monday, we're going to start off with back squat as the priority movement. And we're going to be we already did an accumulation phase where they did a little bit more volume. So now we're going to be driving an intensity progression for them, where we basically run a linear progression. We started a little bit higher, more towards that hypertrophy range, and we start to bring them down towards building towards a new 1 rep max in their back squat. So they're coming off a rest day. They're going to be fresh for that. It should be something that they can handle pretty well. And then we'll go into an interval where we're going to be featuring a single leg challenge, let's call it, right? So basically this could be something where you're getting a little bit tired, but you're touching on fatigue, but it's not super high. And then you're doing something that is going to be unilateral, where only one leg, well, often both legs are working at a time, but one is dominated in how it is working at a time. So for example, like a weighted box step up would be a great example. You could throw that into an interval format with another gymnastics movement or something similar, and it'll work great. And then we're gonna do some torque tank, which is basically a sled and assault bike, sort of like a buyout, like, tap piece, like you might call that tap work. Basically, like it's really high effort, shorter duration, sort of like sprinty type work. And that's sort of a great way to get some of the hypertrophy qualities without getting a lot of the wear and tear on the joints, especially for someone as they're getting a little bit older. So that's Monday. Again, one of the big priority days for them. Tuesday, again, I want them doing touches of weightlifting work for sure, but we just squatted the day before. That was a lot of volume and a lot of just work in general, so likely they're not going to be feeling great. Again, they typically get some inflammation the day after they do some squatting like that, especially with some intensity, so it's important that we give them something similar, but a different feel. So we're going to be doing some power snatches. Again, power snatches, because you can get the overhead, you can get the pull, but yet you're not going into a full squat. So it's a good way to do that. And likely I'd have them warm up the full snatch in the warm up to, again, kind of clear out some of the inflammation out of that squat pattern too. And then For this person, I'm going to have them doing a Metcon featuring, so today it's going to be pressing and inversion work. So sort of a high interference Metcon where it's press, or press midline. So inversion basically saying you're upside down. So it could be wall walks, it could be handstand walks, it could be handstand push-ups. Really any variation of that would work perfectly fine. Again, I'm leaving this pretty open-ended. You can see I can use quite a bit of creativity afterwards. And then I'll probably give them a little bit of pressing accessory work and possibly some shoulder health stuff after that. Wednesday, we're going to do some cleaning. However, I'm actually going to have them doing like a power clean plus a front squat plus a jerk. The reason I'm going to have, and again, we can run different progressions or different variations of a complex like that. The reason I'm having them do that is because it just allows them, or it prevents them from having to catch in the bottom of their squat. So they can catch their power clean. I mean, this athlete's got pretty good hinging ability anyway, so it allows them to catch in their power clean, stand it up, and then to be able to have a more stable environment, or maybe a more controlled environment, and a little bit less like reactive, and basically putting a lot of stress on end range of motion by descending into the front squat rather than catching in the front squat, so to speak, of like a clean. So it gives them just a little more freedom that way. Then we're going to do some hanging gymnastics, and this is going to be in an interval format where this is going to be shorter, more like a power-based interval. So basically something like that. Well, I'll fill it in later on, but you'll kind of get the idea. And then we'll call it an engine touch. This is something that's sort of aerobic power-based, but I want it to be featuring basically an element of pacing. So you could write engine work where it's really basic and not very exciting for the person to do, and just sort of like bland intervals, but you could also do it where it requires a bit more pacing for that athlete to get their best like score, so to speak, and they can game it a little bit more. So for an athlete who's got quite a bit of experience, I think that's a great option to still give them a touch of engine work. Let's move to Friday. We'll come back to that recovery day in a second. So Friday, again, we basically had squat on Monday, squat on Wednesday, except Wednesdays was lower volume, basically, allows them to not get super beat up from that day. So Friday is going to be another priority day because we're coming off that rest day. So we're going to be doing front and back squat on that same day, which is something that I like to incorporate again for, actually, I'm going to reverse those two. I prefer to do front squat or back squat before front squat, just because typically it feels pretty good, and it doesn't, it's okay front squatting with more tired legs because the absolute load isn't quite as heavy. And then we'll be having them do more like aerobic intervals, which again, this is basically saying that it's sort of like a Metcon, but you're repeating it multiple times, and you're going to have enough rest in between where you wouldn't be able to fully recover if you went super hard. So maybe it's like a 70% effort where you can repeat it. And then these aerobic intervals, I'm looking basically to, again, feature some sort of pushing and pulling movements. Again, there's very open-ended. I know this athlete maybe touches on like legless rep climbs might be helpful for them. Actually, some horizontal pressing might not be a bad option. Again, those are just some kind of laying out some options for myself as I look at this, knowing their priorities. And then afterwards, we'll go into more some accessories and joint health. Those can be sort of 2 in 1. I blend them together. Saturday, we will do some snatch strength work. This is the full snatch variation, or at least part of it. It could be a complex. That'll probably vary a lot based on part 2, which is actually the name game workout. So obviously that's varying week over week, but it's something that, I'll look at the name game and see what's in there before I end up actually programming their Friday, and also before I know what's in their strength work. So let's move to Thursday. Thursday, is again, what I call this is like movement and mobility work, right? So this can be, for them, the priorities in terms of like the movements that need work and the patterns that need work is they're always going to need work on like hip flexion, right? This is going to be important to be able to maintain good mechanics as you're coming out of your squat, but also things like toes to bar, GHDs, even burpees where you're actively closing your hip. They have a hard time breathing in those positions super well, so that's going to be helpful for them. We'll do some quad care. Again, just making sure the quads don't get too like hot, right? that they're tracking correctly and staying with good soft tissue quality. We'll work on the T-spine there a bit, and then also in these days I just like to do some aerobic work. All right, so let's actually fill it in right now. So that's just the template. It gives you a pretty good rough overview. Now let's go through day by day. So now I'm just looking up at the template. Now I can actually fill in each of these days based on that. So Monday, so let's go 4 rounds at warm-up pace. Just giving them some things to do here, getting them nice and warm in terms of their hips. So 8 90-90 hip rotations. Actually, let's put in some cyclical work before this. 10 cal air bike. 6 air squat. All right, 6 air squat at tempo of 5-second lower, 5-second pause, 5-second raise, 1-second reset at the top. And then let's go 4 pausing Cossack squats. Okay. And then we'll get into, actually I'd probably prefer them to do just a little bit of trunk stiffness work. So let's call it a McGill bird dog 3x3 each side, and then we'll have them go into their first strength part. So knowing where they've been at before, they were up to like 4 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 8 in the squats. So let's have them start at 5 sets of 6 here. And again, I'm sort of making this up as a blind spot for this athlete because I haven't seen like this made up person, so I really don't know where they're at in terms of like a progression. But I think 5x6 somewhere around 72 to realistically probably 70 to 73%, somewhere in that range, would be challenging but repeatable. Let's call it rest 3 minutes. And then so for the interval piece, let's have them do the example I gave before of the weighted box step up. So let's have them, thinking of what else I could pair with that. Air bike in the warm up. We're gonna have some air bike afterwards, so I prefer not to do that. We're gonna have potentially we could do some skiing in the warm up tomorrow. So let's have them row here. So let's have it be a 16 calorie row, and 8 dumbbell box step up to 24 inches, 50 pounds a hand. Okay, I'm thinking what kind of volume I want. I don't really care about the cyclical movement. I'm more concerned about actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring this down and I'm going to put another set afterwards of the rowing, just to give them a little bit more fatigue without it being on the legs. Again, if I only think about the dumbbell box step up volume, especially after the back squat they've already gotten, we don't need to do more than 8 would be plenty. I would say give them a bit of a range depending on how they're feeling. And I like doing this a lot with my Masters athletes. So we'll say 5 to 7, right? And realistically, the cows combined, you're looking at 24. If they're rowing really hard, that's a little over a minute. This is like 90 seconds of work. So let's actually, I think 90 seconds of rest might be enough to repeat that. But if in case they do slow down, I'd rather not leave it a little bit more open-ended. We'll say rest 1 to 1. And then this buyout here, we're going to, again, keep this pretty short, really low volume. We might actually reduce the volume of the intervals for like that B moving forward in future weeks, and increase this sort of buyout effort and just kind of the focus that we're giving to it. For now, let's keep it pretty simple. 3 sets of let's call it 15 cal air bike and max meters tank push until the 1 minute mark. And then again, something like that is obviously going to be extremely challenging in terms of being able to repeat that. It's very anaerobic. So they're going to be crushed for a little while after that. So realistically, if I want this to be really high quality work, Maybe not the highest quality where they're truly all out every time, but high quality, maybe every 5 minutes where it's, you're getting 4 minutes of complete rest in between there. I'd probably have them do like a 5-minute flush on the air bike after that. And then what's called a 2-minute couch stretch, and then foam roll the quads a bit. All right, that's day 1. Tuesday. All right, we got power snatches. So let's give them the Zor snatch warm up. That'll be good for them. It gives some like bootstrap or some things that really open up the hips as well. And that's not their only limitation, right? Like it's really easy to get hyper focused on their knees because that's something that's bothering them. But obviously if they have great shoulder mobility, they can make up some from the lower body as well. So it's important to give them a well-rounded take. And for them, I'm want them skiing part 1 because we're going to be doing a lot of pressing work later on, and just getting their overhead without a lot of knee flexion in the first part is going to be helpful anyway. So then let's go into some power snatch. We were doing some snatches, but it was more like very kind of minimal touches and not super heavy before. So let's sort of somewhere around here. I start often in this range for a lot of people. There's plenty of room to build. I mean, for an athlete who's not incredibly strong, it's around 74% for a couple of power snatches is totally doable. And that's of their full snatch. So then, and if I don't prescribe the rest between the clusters, it's rest as you need to. Usually it's sort of a drop and reset, and then rest as you need to between sets as well. So their Metcon, this is going to be featuring pressing and inversion. So we were doing some, the shoulders are probably not going to feel completely fresh after yesterday's dumbbell box step overs, just because you have to swing those a bit, especially if you're not a super tall person. So let's think, instead of doing a handstand push-up, let's have them do a handstand walk variation, and then something that's a little bit more press focused along with that. So let's make this a triplet where it's a bar facing burpee and it's called a deadlift, right? We can keep it pretty light and low volume. And we're going to make this kind of fun where it's ascending. I don't want this to be an all-out effort, but definitely should be challenging. I did something similar, and I think this is a pretty cool way to do it. Let's have it be, it's got to be enough where you don't accumulate handstands too quickly. Let's make it even, but then the deadlifts are obviously not going to be super heavy. Let's make it slightly lighter than the 225. Let's go 205. Just enough where they're probably incentivized to hold on to those. And obviously that's going to really start to challenge the overhead by the time they're breathing that hard, and the midline is going to be really blown up. So thinking about that in terms of, I don't want to give them a ton of pressing accessory. I'll probably just give them some, honestly, I'll just have them, so on Friday you'll see I put horizontal pressing. I might actually give them horizontal pressing here. I might literally give them some deficit push-ups. Let's call it 3 by AMRAP minus 2 to 3. Keep that rest pretty short. And then we'll give them our banded shoulder health routine. It's got some banded extra rotations, some things like that. And for them, I'll probably also have them, I'm going to insert this right into here. Just for the sake of back health, give them a little bit of midline work, especially after all that deadlift and handstand walk stuff. All right, that's that day. Moving on to Wednesday. So let's give them a little bit of an EMOM in the warm up here. Five RDL, 5 bent row, 5 front squat, and 5 strict press. Empty bar. It's all in the same minute. Minute 2. Actually, let's move this to minute 2. I'm give him a little bit of cyclical work again. Let's put him back on the rower. Rower's great because it's knee flexion, but it's no eccentric really. Jerk. It's going to be a bit of an issue. Again, we're balancing both the squatting and the jerk movement for them. Squatting, groin stretch. A little bit of cat pose is just for the overhead. And here, let's give them a little bit of something just to kind of wake up the nervous system and get them hinging again. So let's go 4 box jump step downs from 30 inches. And we're going to actually make that from seated, so we just use the legs a little bit more. And then go into our complex. So today, let's make this power clean plus 2 front squat plus 2 jerk. Obviously, that jerk is going to get tiring by the end. We're going to put them on a clock here, just so they don't really go crazy heavy with the jerk. So let's go 15-minute clock. I wouldn't always have them build heavy, but I think it might be appropriate here with it being that many reps. It's not really comparable to anything, so it makes it less like mentally stressful to sustain something like that in terms of matching it week over week, because it will switch up. Intervals, hanging gymnastics that are more power based. So I'm going to kind of show something that I would give a lot to quite a bit of my CrossFit athletes. So I really like giving a cyclical piece into hanging gymnastics. So for them, let's just assume that they need some ring muscle up work. Actually, I realized that this is the same thing I did for the Mondays, but it's going to be a very different feel. Let's actually switch it up a little just to kind of give it a different look. So let's go 6 shuttle run. Get them breathing a little bit. Rather than doing some, I would probably give them burpees if I didn't give them burpees yesterday, but obviously we did that. So let's give them a little bit more bounding so it's not high interference at all. So let's go 12 box jump overs. We already warmed with the box jump over, so that's a really good combo. And even that, you're still looking at, 6 times, let's call it 8 seconds, so 48 seconds for the shuttle runs. You're looking at minute 15. I don't want them doing ring muscle ups for 45 seconds, so we need to increase something. Let's make this 8 shuttle runs. And then that'll probably leave them with not nearly as much time, maybe 30 seconds for ring muscle ups. So they'll probably have to break that up at least once, but that's fine. And then for an athlete like this, I would probably give them a little bit of a cue, like break ring muscle ups once. And make your reps repeatable. That's going to be pretty challenging, so I'm not going to give them a ton of sets, but I'm going to give them fairly good rest. So let's call it every 4 minutes. That gives them a 1-to-1 work rest times 4 sets. Right, and 4 sets is not a ton, so they can get pretty repeatable there. And then an engine touch featuring some way to pace it. So again, something that's allows for a bit more creativity in how you go about. So we're actually going to hold to a similar format. Let's actually do the exact same thing just to make a point here. So let's go every 4 minutes, 400-meter run. So we're going to run, but obviously a different format again. You know what, for them, I'm not going to have them run because their knees might not love that, doing that multiple times after squatting. So let's go 400-meter row, because we did row in the warm-up. And that, yeah, that'll work. And then let's have a max air bike cows and remainder. You know what? We're going to flip-flop this, because that kind of puts a lot of stress on the air bike, and I would prefer it to be flipped. So let's go 500. I'm not super familiar with that. Let's go 15 cow air bike, and then max meter row. And remainder. Must increase. Just kind of, again, allowing themselves to cool down and breathe and recover a bit there. And then we'll go into our hip flexor mobility checklist. Non-sleep, deep rest, basically like a controlled breathing, sort of body awareness type things, is calming to the nervous system after that. Our recovery day. So aerobic, you know, I obviously want to have them doing some mobility work and some movement work and, yeah, stretching and things. So I want them a little bit warm to get into that. So we'll put them on an air bike again. 10 minutes is zone 1, and then we'll get into our actual work. So let's start with the lower body first. No particular reason, I just like doing that. Hip flexion. So we're going to do a series here where we get them into the right range. So let's put them into a lizard stretch. And then we'll go into, I actually want that. I think it's going to not quite be enough hamstring. And supine hamstring. And then we'll have them go into a seated L sit hold. Tough can mean whatever they want it to mean. Next, so that was some hip flexion. I probably actually want them doing a little bit more. Now that they've actually claimed that range, let's have them use it a little bit more. So a standing single leg knee extension. Let's go 5 by 5 each. And then we're kind of going to transition into that quad care side of things. We're going to go a banded TKE. It's terminal knee extension, working the last 15 degrees of that range of motion, making sure the VMOs are still getting some touch throughout the week, since, you know, as you come out of the bottom of your squat, you don't really, you know, blaze up against end range. This kind of allows you to work that end range a little bit. So 3 by 20 per side. And then actually we're going to pair that with let's have them do saddle pose. And then that'll actually tie in good to this seated bicep stretch, because that saddle pose, the hands are already back behind the body. It's a great way to get into this. Arms start falling asleep if you hold that one too long. And then we will then do the T-spine opener. 3 by 30 seconds, and we're going to pair that once again with a supinated dead hang. Great. And then realistically, I'd probably have them do like some more aerobic work after that, where maybe it's 3 minutes, zone 1. They get to choose what erg they want to be on. They can switch it up if they please, and then 2 minutes choice mobility work. Again, this athlete's been around a while. They know what they're doing, so that allows them a little bit of freedom. November 4th. All right, back squat and front squat. Okay, let's go. I've been giving this one to a few athletes, and I kind of like it. It's simple. And it gets them moving right away. Hip flow sequence. More 3-minute air bike. Our squat sequence 1.0, which is 5 sets of 5 air squats in a few different ways. And we'll give them the old 2.0, which is in the bottom of the squat the entire time. They're just moving through that at a sort of a relaxed pace. Really gets their legs warm, their joints warm, that gets the synovial fluid in there and gets them feeling good before they actually have to load up heavy. I might give them some more activation work. Well, let's put it in here. Star side plank just to get the glutes going. Let's call it that, and then now we're into our working sets. Back squat. Again, I'd rather keep intensity and volume sort of moderate here. This is not as much the priority day, even though they are coming off rest days, should move well. The goal isn't to just like really trash them because they need to perform tomorrow as well. So let's call back squat 4 triples at 80%. And then front squat, let's go 4 doubles at 85%. Keeping it simple, but yet that'll be plenty of challenge on the legs. Now we have an aerobic interval featuring pushing and pulling. We haven't done rope climbs yet, so let's do some rope climbs. We did some horizontal pressing already, so I'm going to do maybe some vertical pulling. And we'll maybe make it more of a grip challenge thing, where maybe we do some barbell cycling with it. So let's go legless rope climb and clean and jerk. Ooh, let's go hang, clean and jerk. Obviously very grip intensive. This will be probably the bottleneck in this workout for this person. So legless rope climb, we're going to keep this pretty low. Let's go 2, and we're going to make this a little bit more voluminous and not super tension based. So let's make that, let's go 95. Ooh, let's not make it 3 rounds. Let's make it 4 times, but then give them a look. I don't like quite how much this is, so let's bring this down just a bit. Let's go 15, but now we're gonna go like this. I like that a lot. That's pretty short, so we're gonna go high effort. Tell them to go for it, basically. Go for broke. All right. Then let's give them a little bit of like elbow health, and that could be as simple as some bicep curls, banded bicep curls. Just some like really high rep, low tension stuff. So let's go 2x4, 3x40. And then other joint health, banded face pulls. Still getting the bicep, but now working upper back. And after front squats, that's a great exercise for that. And then for them, let's actually give them the knee health routine here, which again is some banded TKEs, and that can be everything from Patrick step ups to some lower leg stuff as well. And then let's say the name game workout is one that they already did. Let's say it's, I really should have done this beforehand, but let's say it was the Riddler, and that was 27 shuttle run. I probably wouldn't have given a shuttle run earlier in the week if I knew this was it, but anyway. 21 line facing burpee, 15 deadlifts at 315. Those rest 60 seconds, and then you go back through. So let's say that was it, and then it's basically like a cool down after that. So what's before that? Well, I could throw in all the movement work. Let's just call it the movement prep work. That's from before. I'm not actually going to write that out. And then our snatch strength could just be, pretend we already prepped for snatches. And again, we already did some power snatch clusters earlier in the week, so I'd like to see them doing some snatches that are a little bit more intensity based. So let's give them every 90 seconds for at least 10. Let's make it 12 sets. And snatch we're going to make this a little heavier. Give them a bit of a range just in case they're not feeling as great today, but that should be completely doable for them where they're at. And this is a squat snatch. Okay, and then we'll do the rehearsal round, which again, all that is built out for them, and then we'll move into the Riddler. So there you have it. I hope you guys found this useful. If you did, let me know. I can make more content like this going forward, but as always, stay the course.